this edition of Southern Newsweek, the discovery of a highly toxic mineral at Dunedin Hospital shuts down some services. We learn what an expert in lethal drones has been doing in Dunedin. And we take a look at the new approach that's being taken to encourage better eating habits. Kia ora, I'm Holly Buchanan. Experts are being consulted about the discovery of asbestos at Dunedin Hospital. The Southern DHB has closed some services at the hospital after finding the mineral in several parts of the building. And that's just the first step in addressing the problem.
Cordoning off contaminated areas. Asbestos has been discovered in 4 different levels of Dunedin Hospital during routine checks by the Southern DHB.
Some of the broad brush swabs showed positive results, and as a result of that we did much more concentrated testing and swabbing in those areas, and from all of those swabs we've come away with 3 positive results.
Several parts of the first floor are contaminated, with surface tests from last week showing positive for asbestos. An ultrasound waiting room, corridor and radiology offices are all affected, but the board's trying to keep the problem contained.
We took immediate action. Patient safety, staff safety, public safety is our number 1 priority. So we closed down those areas and we are looking to bring experts in who arrived this morning.
Those experts will be working to contain or remove asbestos and clean affected areas. It's looking like a big job, with several different types of asbestos identified throughout the hospital.
We've found in restricted areas or encapsulated areas, we've found all 3 types of asbestos. So chrysotile, amosite and crucidolite. In other areas where there's been workplaces or spaces, we've found chrysotile, which is white asbestos.
Regular testing by the DHB in its local buildings has been ongoing ahead of planned changes to health and safety laws. Results of the latest tests are expected to become available in the next 24 hours. Anyone concerned about being exposed can call a hospital hotline. Annabelle Dick, 39 Dunedin News.
A one-day amnesty on green waste is set to cost the Dunedin City Council about $10,000. Residents were invited to dispose of green waste for a gold coin donation last weekend in an effort to reduce fire fuel. But that's not the only benefit to come from the initiative.
Turning excess vegetation into compost. Almost 300 tonnes of green waste was dropped off at the Green Island landfill on Sunday. About 1,000 residents took advantage of the opportunity to dispose of weeds and other plant matter for a gold coin donation.
Following the Saddle Hill fire, the Rural Fire Authority were concerned about the amount of fuel that might be building up around people's houses, and they approached us and a number of councils across Otago to see whether we would consider doing a free green waste day over the Labour weekend to encourage people to create a safe barrier around their houses without any fuel to fuel the fire.
It's believed to be the first time a green waste amnesty's been held in Dunedin. Normally over Labour weekend, residents drop off 60 to 80 tonnes of vegetation at landfill, with each carload costing about $80, and that's been tripled in just one day.
We knew this would be popular, but we weren't able to get the advertising out very early, so we really didn't know how many people we would get, and we had over 1,000 loads come in, and we estimate that was about 270 tonnes.
The council estimates it'll cost about $10,000 to process the waste, with some being turned into compost and the rest going into landfill. Almost $3,000 was collected in gold coin donations, and all that money's going to the Walkery Volunteer Fire Brigade. Now the council's deciding whether the amnesty's worth repeating.
The volume that we had and the number of people coming in did cause some traffic problems. So if we were going to look at it again, we'd have to look at how we managed all of those things and whether or not the cost to council versus the benefit to the community weighs up.
No one wants a repeat of the Saddle Hill fire, which tore through residential properties. And with a hot, dry summer forecast, authorities are hoping the citywide green waste clean-up makes all the difference. Rosie Mannins, 39 Dunedin News.
An international expert in the use of lethal drones has been visiting the city to launch a book on the topic. The Centre for Peace and Conflict Studies invited the author to discuss her findings with students at the University of Otago. And she says modern warfare isn't just an issue for some countries.
Words written to spark debate. American author Laurie Calhoun's latest work examines the morality of using drones to kill people. She's been in Dunedin launching the book at the University of Otago, where it's been well received.
Lots of people seem interested in the topic. I think the questions have been on people's minds for a while, but the topic has never really been debated. Part of the reason for that is that it wasn't discussed. It wasn't acknowledged by the government for 10 years.
Research for the book wasn't easy, with drone technology relatively new, but the lack of historical information allowed Calhoun to focus on their current use and whether they're necessary.
The reason why we have a drone program is because the technology was developed. So the ability to kill people thousands of miles away without putting boots on the ground has given leaders the capacity to kill people whom they would not have killed in the 20th century.
Drones are unmanned aerial vehicles, which often have missiles or ammunition strapped to them to be used to kill. They're primarily being used by the United States, Russia and the UK, but Calhoun says drones are something people everywhere should know and care about.
I think that the public needs to be taking notice of this. I mean, a New Zealander was killed not too long ago in Yemen, so it's affecting everyone, even New Zealanders.
She's heading back to the United States at the end of the month, with plans to continue the lethal drone conversation. Ruby McAndrew, 39, Dunedin News.
A new executive team has been elected to represent students at Otago Polytechnic. That comes as the institution is preparing to expand by taking on courses from other tertiary providers. And there's more change on the horizon.
Taking note of the issues. These newly elected representatives are pushing for change as they approach their term with the Otago Polytechnic Students Association. They're pledging to tackle several topics including funding, multi-participation and student expenses.
Well, I'd like to benefit the students with their living circumstances, so around housing and financing, getting more advertisement and awareness around OPSA to present so that we can get more funding.
They say getting students to engage with the association can be difficult, as many don't know what the group does. The election only attracted a few hundred votes from students, although thousands are enrolled. So new representatives are wanting to raise the profile of the OPSA as well as awareness about its role within the Polytechnic.
It's more about getting known and getting people to actually come on board and help, because it's not just about the board itself, it's also about the students being proactive.
The Polytechnic is preparing to expand in size and purpose. It's looking at taking on design courses recently ditched by the University of Otago and may also cover Aoraki Polytechnic's local programs. Miller says that means the student voice needs to be strong.
Students are here to study, so that should be their main priority, and the growth of the Polytech is the management's job, so that's their job, and then students can study. But if there are any concerns, then I think that OPSA should definitely be able to push their concerns forward.
First on the agenda is making the OPSA more visible on campus. Then these executives can start guiding the changes they desire for the benefit of all students. Annabelle Dick, 39 Dunedin News.
The government's latest food and nutrition guidelines are getting the thumbs up from local health professionals. Many of the eating recommendations are commonplace, but experts say reinforcing them is a positive step. And the advice comes with a new approach.
Promoting dietary discipline. Every few years, the Ministry of Health updates its food and nutrition guidelines, keeping up with the rapidly changing field. But for the first time, the guidelines are being combined with physical activity advice, which is impressing local health experts.
I think this is a really good one because they've made them quite a lot more user-friendly. I think they've made them quite a lot more descriptive for people and just a lot more informative so that they have a much better idea of how to eat healthily.
One key message in the new guidelines is that there's no need to restrict overall carbohydrate consumption. People are instead being encouraged to choose healthier, less processed options. And food manufacturers are expected to adapt to changing demand.
I think it's actually a really good challenge for industry now to actually try and come up with even more products that actually meet the food and nutrition guidelines, given that the vast majority of the products they produce now are really in those centre aisles and not around the outside.
The latest nutrition advice is mostly for adults, but adds to the government's new scheme for reducing childhood obesity. Researchers say countering unhealthy habits will be a challenge.
Unless we make it easier for people to follow these guidelines by, changing food advertising, maybe taxation, all those much controversial environmental issues, it actually probably isn't going to make a huge dent for people because it can be hard to eat healthily with those other barriers.
She has some reservations but says the guidelines are a step in the right direction. They're providing the public with a definitive set of eating principles. Ruby McAndrew, 39, Dunedin News.
Still to come on Southern Newsweek. Changes for the Octagon as plane tree stumps are removed to make way for seating. And recently uncovered historic cobblestones are being uplifted and moved to a new home within the warehouse precinct. Welcome back. The Octagon is being prepared for new public seating to replace historic trees removed earlier this year. Contractors for the City Council have taken out old tree stumps to make way for bench chairs, and more work is being planned.
Renovating the city's heart. Contractors are laying grass to cover recently removed tree stumps from the Octagon. It follows a January felling of 2 large plane trees, each about 130 years old.
The stump grind was done last evening, so that was over the space of 2 to 3 hours, and then contractors have been back on site this morning establishing the grass, so that will be all completed by the end of today.
The council's working on a long-term plan to upgrade the Octagon as well as other parts of the central city. That's still a wee way off, and staff decided to remove tree stumps to allow for more public space in the meantime. It's one upside to the plight of some of the Octagon's iconic trees.
They were removed due to failing health of those trees and long-term concern around health and safety, so those trees were removed, so the stumps relate to those trees that were felled recently.
The council considered different options and chose extra seating over more vacant green space. Contractors are planning to be finished by the end of the day, so the next and final stage of the project can begin.
There will be 3 seats installed in the Octagon. That'll be for the benefit of obviously the general public, but also the seats located closest to George Street will be usable for the tourists that are on the buses.
The chairs are expected to be installed in the Octagon by the end of November. They'll provide more opportunities for locals and visitors alike to enjoy the outdoors while in the CBD. Annabelle Dick, 39 Dunedin News.
Local tertiary students are helping one another outside the classroom through a project organised by the Otago University Students Association. OUSA is opening a free shop for pre-loved flatting goods, and the new venture is likely to ease the load for rubbish collectors.
Out with the old. These University of Otago students are handing over items from their flat for the next influx of people set to live around campus.
At the end of the year, there's often quite a lot of stuff that's left out from flats on the pavements, or it's thrown away into the skips, and much of it is quite usable and could be quite useful for students at another time.
Student support staff say furniture is often left on the side of the road when students are vacating flats and leaving the city. The idea of a free shop is aimed at keeping the streets a bit cleaner. In that vein, collectors are offering to pick up usable items that students are wanting to get rid of.
What we're doing is encouraging students to not throw away the stuff that is in good condition and could perhaps find a home with another student next year, but to let us come and pick it up and use it to open a free shop next year.
Setting up a student flat can be expensive, despite many renters opting for cheap items. This new project is also aiming to cut costs, especially as many students aren't in a position to earn money for essentials.
A lot of students don't have anything at all, so we're thinking things like kettles, toasters, crockery, cutlery, cooking utensils, those are just the basics, and if you bought them new, well, you could easily spend a couple of $100 just like that.
Interest in the concept is already picking up, with numerous students registering to have their furniture collected. That'll happen over the next few weeks, and support staff are planning to open the free shop early next year. Annabelle Dick, 39 Dunedin News. Historic cobblestones laid in Duke Street more than 100 years ago are being given a new home.
They've been unearthed by contractors working on a pipeline renewal project for the Dunedin City Council. Now the stones are set to enhance another part of the city.
Surveying a working archaeology site. City Council staff are overseeing the removal of historic cobblestones from underneath the surface of Duke Street.
It's a very early set of cobblestones. The archaeologist thinks it's about 1860s, 1870s, so that's fairly early in Dunedin's development, and it's great that such a large section of them are in situ without having been damaged in the past.
The stones have been assessed by National Heritage authorities, which are allowing their removal and storage. The cobbles will likely be used around Vogel Street, where a new pedestrian area is being designed.
The archaeologist has recommended, and Heritage New Zealand have agreed as well, is that we could reuse them somewhere else. Our plan is to hopefully reuse them in the warehouse precincts, as we know there's already cobbling in that area, and so we can use them down there as a bit of a feature.
It's not unusual for cobblestones to be found just under the city's surface. Many form the foundation of local roads, but the ones in Duke Street are older than most and have remained in situ without damage, which is quite rare.
Most often in this type of situation you prefer to leave them in situ as much as possible, so just leave them where they are and cover them back over. But in this situation that wasn't possible because they need to do some quite intensive works in the area.
It's unlikely the cobblestones will be relaid anytime soon. They're being kept in safe storage until a time when the City Council's ready to place them underfoot once more. Rosie Mannins, 39, Dunedin News.
And just ahead on Southern Newsweek, we'll find out what role the zebrafish is playing as researchers study heart defects in humans, and competition heats up at a local kindergarten. Welcome back. Researchers have discovered a possible cause of congenital heart defects with the help of fish. A University of Otago study has revealed how low levels of a certain protein may be responsible for heart problems. And although the research has been done on fish, it's set to help humans.
Fishing for answers. These researchers are using fish to pinpoint the cause of heart problems in humans.
We can use the fish as a model for the human disease, and it's also raised the possibility that humans and the general population that don't have enough of this gene might also be predisposed to heart disease.
Researchers have been looking at heart defects associated with a development disorder called Cornelia-de Lange syndrome. The condition can't be tracked in growing babies, but it can be identified in zebrafish embryos. Scientists have found that by taking away a certain gene, fish start having heart problems.
We didn't knock out the whole gene or eliminate the protein altogether. What we did was just decreased it by about 80%, and so there was some left in the fish and they could grow just fine. But all of the fish that this happened to developed heart defects.
It's difficult to detect congenital heart disease until a baby is born, and the study can't help people who already have the syndrome. But with more advances, preventative work could be done while babies are growing in the womb.
The more we understand about how genes influence early development, the more likely it is we'll be able to maybe adopt preventative measures, but for genetic diseases there aren't really any good curative measures.
Horsfield says offering supplements to pregnant women in case problems arise could dramatically reduce the number of defects. The research was funded by the Neurological Foundation and the Royal Society of New Zealand Marsden Fund. Annabelle Dick, 39 Dunedin News.
Local fans of veteran crooner Neil Diamond turned out in their thousands to watch him perform live at the weekend. Crowds of jubilant concert goers streamed into Forsyth Bar Stadium early Saturday evening for Diamond's only local show. Just over 13,000 people attended, many of them long-time fans. A screening of an All Blacks haka kicked things off before Diamond took to the stage with his band. The 74-year-old American singer performed for more than 2 hours. His New Zealand tour also includes 2 shows in Auckland. The local concert included all his greatest hits and many he'd written for other well-known musicians. Surf lifesavers from around the country have been testing their skills and endurance at St Clair. Dozens have competed in the yearly race around White Island, which has been running for almost 5 decades. It's one last chance for lifeguards to enjoy the beach before they start summer patrols.
Bounding into the break, dozens of the country's surf lifesavers have been giving their all over Labour weekend, tackling a 5-kilometre race around White Island. The event has a long history, enticing water lovers from near and far to St Clair Beach since 1969.
Competitors can choose their craft, and we have people from all sorts of clubs. We've got people from Mount Maunganui today, from Christchurch. They all come down and, as I said, get raced around the island, and it's just kind of the start of our surf season, really.
Conditions were tricky for the almost 50 competitors with 1.5 metre swells. The rough seas saw over 10 participants pull out, but the majority powered through.
We had a good at least 30 people make it around the island, so it's pretty exciting. It's good for the club and it's good for everyone to test their abilities in surf, because at the end of the day we're here as lifeguards to make sure it's safe for the public.
The race is organised by the St Clair Surf Lifesaving Club as the first big event of the season. Competitors were keen to get into the surf after a long winter, and now they're amping for summer patrols. But even the race winner was challenged by the rugged local conditions.
Just the distance of the race, really, and the surf conditions and all that. So the surf conditions here are quite different to at home, so quite a bit harder. But yeah.
No records were broken this time around, leaving the St Clair Club breathing a sigh of relief, with a $1,000 prize going unclaimed. But with an anticipated busy summer ahead, organisers expect the competition to be even more fierce next year. Ruby McAndrew, 39, Dunedin News.
And finally, local preschoolers are growing flowers as part of a nationwide gardening competition. It's all about teaching young children how to care for plants. And one Dunedin kindergarten is aiming for a 3rd consecutive win.
Measuring months of growth. These kids at Mornington Kindergarten are among almost 13,000 budding gardeners taking part in a national sunflower growing competition. The project is in its 3rd year. It's designed to grow children's independence and responsibility as they learn to take care of plants.
They love the gardening, and they take ownership of watering them, as you see in the background, and look around every morning, even the family themselves. And they stay there and look around the garden and say, we're going to have to do this at home.
Staff say the kindy kids are beginning to understand the concept of teamwork while growing their sunflowers as tall as possible. Mornington Kindergarten has twice won the title of Best Sunflowers in Otago. It's a feat staff and children are hoping to repeat.
We'd like to have another win, but mostly because it just provides us, when we win, we get all the products from Dalton's and then we put it back into the garden again, so the children just redo it.
The children water the plants each day while measuring growth. It's not the first time they've had experience with gardening. The kindergarten boasts all kinds of plants which children have tended to over the years.
They really enjoy it, and we've always done the flower gardens around the place as well with the vegetables and talked about how it's a correlation, so that you put the marigolds around by the vegetables and that helps with the pests.
All participating kindergartens around the country have just over a month left of growing time. The winner will receive a gardening workshop with a top landscape designer. But for these budding gardeners, the real prize will be the gold at the top of a stem. Ruby McAndrew, 39, Dunedin News.
And that's all for this edition of Southern Newsweek. Please do visit our website, dunedintv.co.nz, where you can download Southern Newsweek and watch individual clips of 39 Dunedin News or webcast the show. I'm Holly Buchanan. Thanks for watching.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.